Hello, I'm Gil Zilkha. Welcome to Essential Classical Music. This video is taken from my larger video on the consensus reference recordings of the core classical music repertoire. Not my choices, but rather the collective critical consensus that has filtered down through the years, across generations, across continents, to which you have also contributed. And if you agree with my choices, or if you think the consensus lies elsewhere, as always, feel free to comment, and I hope you enjoy it. Now we come to Mozart, the Mozart symphonies. And I'm going to start with a granddaddy version from maybe the most acclaimed Mozart interpreter of all, at least on recordings, and that's Sir Thomas Beecham. And really one of his great legacies is this set of Mozart symphonies that he recorded in the 30s with the London Philharmonic. Even though it's got old sound and it's been recorded by a ton of different groups and conductors since then, I think this one still occupies a special place to where it can be called a reference. Alongside this one, Bruno Walter with the Columbia Symphonies. Columbia Symphony, one of his later year recordings with the with CBS that he made in the late 50s. This is really a special set and one that has held sway for many decades, so it can be counted alongside the Beecham as well. Next, we come to the piano concertos. And I'm going to start by talking about the piano concertos as a whole, and you probably are going to guess which version of this I'm going to recommend as the reference version, and that's of course this famous one from Murray Pariah, both playing and conducting the English Chamber Orchestra. Now, if you're talking about the individual concertos, there's more debate. But if you're talking about a set of concertos, there have been other really good ones. Barenboim did a really good one as well, with also conducting the ECO. But really, this Pariah is the one that became the version critically acclaimed. Now, I do want to point out one other reference version for his most famous concerto, the 20th concerto. And that is this one, Rudolf Serkin with George Zell and the Columbia Symphony. I think you have to mention this for that number 20 D minor concerto as well. Next, we have the Sinfonia Concertante. And for this one, a relatively modern version, I think, holds sway, and that's this one. Yitzhak Perlman, Pinchas Zukerman, Zubin Mehta, and the Israel Philharmonic. Wonderfully recorded, digital sound, widely critically praised since it came out, and I think it holds its position as a reference recording. Now, for the popular clarinet concerto, this one is another one of those where it's really hard to point to one. Part of the issue, you might say, is that you don't really have, unlike, say, the cellists with Rostropovich and Fournier, it's a little harder to find that superstar clarinetist that is a household name. But I think for the Mozart concerto, there is one version that you at least see in the most places in terms of critical praise, and that is this one with Thea King, who uses a basset clarinet, which is the way Mozart composed it, so that you can hear those low notes in the score, with Jeffrey Tate in the English Chamber Orchestra. And conveniently enough, this is coupled with his probably his most popular chamber work, the Clarinet Quintet, which also, I would say, is the reference version in terms of the versions you most hear about, possibly because it's coupled with this concerto. And that's with Thea King partnered by the Gabrieli Quartet. So a really good combination recording for those two works. And then next, if we're talking about chamber works, you also have to talk about his string quintets, particularly the G minor Kerschel 516, one of his most dramatic works. And this one, there is this standard from the 70s, the Grumio Trio, Arthur Grumio, which is considered the classic, really, for these works. So that's not really too difficult to debate, especially considering we're talking about chamber works. And then finally, let's move on to the vocal works. Mozart's Requiem. You know, for so popular a work as the Mozart Requiem, you would think, as in the case of, say, the Brahms Requiem with Klemperer, that you would have that sort of go-to, obvious standard choice. You really don't with the Mozart Requiem. Now, this is one where you do have some period versions that have come out since the 80s, and then you have the modern instrument versions. It's really hard to pin. There have been a lot of good ones, but I think the closest we have to a reference version is one of those older versions, and it's this one from Karl Böhm with the Vienna Staatsoperchor and the Vienna Philharmonic. It's a little slower than we're used to today, than a lot of the even not even the period performances, but even versions from Neville Marriner or Peter Schreier. You know, take the piece a little bit quicker. But this is the one that I would say that if you were to pinpoint a reference of the Requiem, this one still today gets mentioned a lot. Now we move to the operas, starting with Don Giovanni. And this one, anyone who knows about opera recordings knows that this one is a pretty clear-cut choice in terms of what gets mentioned the most. And that's, of course, the version with conducted by Carlo Maria Giulini with the Philharmonia. Eberhard Wächter is the Don. You have Joan Sutherland as Donna Anna. Elizabeth Schwarzkopf is Donna Elvira. So you have a wonderful cast, very well recorded, very well conducted by Giulini. And this is just one of those recordings that became an instant classic, and it's just held that position since. So that's a pretty clear-cut one in terms of critical acclaim. For Le Nozze di Figaro, The Marriage of Figaro, I'm going to go to this older classic from the 50s, conducted by Erich Kleiber. With the Vienna Philharmonic, you have Cesare Siepi as Figaro, Hilda Guedin is Susanna, Lisa della Casa is the Countess, Alfred Pohl is the Count. He's a little little raw in some sections, but despite that, this is, I think, the one that still holds its position as the classic version, if nothing else because of Kleiber's conducting. So that is our La Nozze. And then finally, let's talk about the Magic Flute, Die Zauberflöte. This one has, first of all, a classic old version from the 30s that I think still holds its position as a reference for the Magic Flute, and that's the one conducted by Sir Thomas Beecham. And this is a German recording, very very much in terms of its cast, and you've got the Berlin Philharmonic, you've got let's see who was Helga Roswanger is Tamino, Tiana Lemnitz is Pamina. Erna Berger was the Queen of the Night. Gerhard Husch is Papageno. So it's this vintage German version from the 30s, which is sort of irreplaceable in that sense, especially with the circumstances that we're about to hit. This was recorded in 1938, and you know, you have a British conductor conducting. So it was one of those that almost has a quasi historical kind of circumstance hovering in the background as well. Now, again, the question is, then, do we have a better sounding stereo reference version? And the answer is yes and no. We have two that I think vie for that position without either one being considered perfect. First, there's the Klemperer, and then you also have, I'll mention the other one, is the Karl Böhm version. And the sort of garden variety synopsis is that if you value the women more, you want the Klemperer, and if you value the men more, you want the Karl Böhm. Karl Böhm has, first of all, Fritz Wunderlich as Tamino, and that's sort of the god voice of all Taminos. You also have Fischer Dieskau is Papageno. But then here you have Gundula Janowitz as Pamina, and you have Lucia Pop as the Queen of the Night. And then Elizabeth Schwarzkopf and Christa Ludwig are two of the three ladies, the smaller parts. So it's pretty star-studded. So you might say that your perfect Frankenstein version would be to somehow combine these two together. They're both very good, and really it's hard to make an argument for one over the other. But I think they can both be considered co-references for stereo versions of the Magic Flute. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, I hope you'll also take time to click the like and subscribe buttons. And with that, I want to wish you all a great day and happy listening.